Hi everyone, I'm here today with Jo Chapman, partner in the Specialist Child Brain Injury team at Bolt Burdon Kemp Solicitors. Jo has written an article for Cerebra's website about the reasons why parents should seek legal advice about a potential claim for compensation for their child with a neurological condition. So welcome, Jo. Thanks for taking the time to speak with us.
Oh, it's a pleasure, James. Thanks very much for having me. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. So to start with, Jo, we wondered if you could explain what led you to write the article.
Yeah, of course. I know, and all my colleagues know, that parents of a child with complex needs, they always want to do the best for their child, but find themselves overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the problems facing them. There's just no time, let alone energy, to make another telephone call in the endless round of telephone calls that fill their day. But when they do finally get in touch with us, it's really heartbreaking to learn how long they've been struggling like this. And by then, they really are in crisis. I also know that people are very reluctant sometimes to speak to a solicitor or hesitant about getting legal advice for any number of reasons, many of which are ill-founded. So I wrote the article because I genuinely believe that the sooner we're involved, the better it is for the child and for the parents. And by getting legal advice at an early stage, parents in this situation may find they can get the help and support they, and more importantly, their child need. And so I wanted to try to dispel some of the myths about the claims process and explain some of the benefits, as well as encourage parents of children with neurodevelopmental conditions, whether they're birth-related or due to stroke or illness or trauma, to get in touch with a specialist solicitor for legal advice. And I also wanted to reassure them that specialist solicitors, they're good people who know what they're doing, and they really do want to help and make a positive difference to their lives. And all it takes is just one phone call just to explore that option.
Absolutely. And in your experience, what are some of the sort of common reasons that parents might put off seeking legal advice?
There are any number of reasons why they put off seeking legal advice, and apart from being overwhelmed with everything that's going on, I think the main reasons are, well, firstly, the parents may not realise that their child has a brain injury, or they may be in denial that anything is wrong. Often it's not until the child is older that it becomes clear that something is wrong, because then parents begin to notice that the children are struggling at school or they can't keep up with others of their age. And even then, it's emotionally challenging for the parents to come to terms with the possibility that your child is struggling. It's not just going through a difficult phase, but actually might be facing something more complex. Another reason, I think, is that they may not realise that their child's condition could have been avoided. So if it happened in hospital, for example, they may have been told, oh, these things can just happen. It's just, it's just one of those things. Or they like and respect their doctors and can't believe that they caused any harm. Or they trust in professionals and don't feel they have the right to question medical advice. Or secondly, they may not realise that their child's condition could have been avoided. That they may have been told in hospital setting, oh, these things just happen. It's just one of those unlucky situations. Or they like and respect their doctors and can't believe that they cause any harm. Or generally they trust in professionals and don't feel they have a right to question medical advice. A common concern in the medical setting is that we hear from parents all the time is that bringing a claim against the NHS will mean that their child will be treated differently by staff or won't be given the treatment that they need. But we've honestly never been in a situation where that's happened. The staff treating the child are not involved in the claim at all, and they're highly unlikely to know about it. So that's really nothing to worry about. But another common reason that parents put off getting legal advice in the medical negligence setting is because they often feel guilty about making a claim against the NHS. They worry it will mean that money is being taken away from the NHS, and that's just not the case. It's always the other side's insurance company that pays the compensation settlement. And the NHS has its own specialist insurer called NHS Resolution. So all NHS trusts pay an annual premium that will cover negligence claims. And in this way, just like motor insurance, really, parents can be sure that a medical negligence settlement will never take money away from frontline care. Another reason that parents put off getting legal advice is because they often feel they're to blame for what's happened to their child. It might be because they feel they didn't ask enough questions at the time, or they didn't speak up enough when they were thinking maybe things were going wrong. Or it might be that NHS staff have made them feel like that, and that in itself could be a red flag that there's been a failure in the care provided. So, for example, some parents might have been told, "Oh, you didn't come into hospital quickly enough." That's often happened to our clients. Another reason that parents put off getting legal advice is that they worry they'll have to pay legal costs, but they just don't need to worry. Specialist solicitors will always offer an initial free, no obligation chat to talk things through. And if they think there's a case and the family want them to pursue it on the child's behalf, they'll find a way to fund it, either through legal aid or under a no-win, no-fee agreement. And I think one reason why people put off getting legal advice is because they think solicitors are intimidating, but really they're not. They're, although maybe perhaps to the other side, which could be a good thing. But the point about specialist solicitors is they have the experience and the skills and the training to know how to communicate clearly and sensitively to families who are going through terrible times. And above all, they really want to help make people's lives better.
Thanks, Jo. I mean, that's some excellent insight as to why reasons parents might put off seeking legal advice. Just picking up on your last point, I can say that we've worked with Bolt Burdon Kemp for many years. Yourself and members of your team have been incredibly professional, incredibly supportive and courteous to work with. So yeah, a real pleasure working with your team. Intimidating is the last word that comes to mind for your department. So yeah, it's been a real pleasure working with you over the years. So as I say, that really helps set the scene as to why parents might put off seeking legal advice. Could you share with us some insight as to why it's important that parents do seek legal advice?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, the parents are legally responsible for their child. And this means that they're responsible for taking care of and protecting their child and their child's legal rights. So they should always consider what's best for their child, and they should always act in their child's best interests. So by seeking legal advice, the parents are fulfilling this legal responsibility. They're acting in their child's best interests by taking steps to protect their child's legal rights and their future. And one really important point to make here is that it's crucial that a child with a brain injury gets the right support right from the start. This might be things like equipment or therapy or adaptations to the home or specialist care. That these things can really help a child to flourish. So at the time when the child's brain is continuing to develop, that's when you want to make the most of what the capacity the child has to learn. So these things can really help a child to flourish and make a real difference to the long term. And the sooner they're put in place, the better. So getting early specialist legal advice can help to put the wheels in motion for all of that to happen. The point about a specialist solicitor is that they will listen to the parent's story and they'll take the time to understand their concerns and investigate further if necessary. If the child has a claim for compensation, a specialist solicitor will arrange the funding for the legal costs and then guide the parents through all the stages of the legal process. And even if after investigating further there are no prospects of succeeding in a claim, at least the parents will know that they've done everything they can to protect their child's interests by exploring that option.
Thank you, Jo. And how can legal advice protect their child's rights?
Well, legal advice can help parents first by identifying the rights themselves. For example, every child has the right to an education, the right to a family life, the right to health and health services, the right to protection against discrimination, and the right to an adequate standard of living. And a child with a disability has the right to live a full and decent life with dignity and, as far as possible, independence, and also the right to play an active part in the community. A child in the UK also has the right to compensation if they've been injured and if the injury is someone else's fault. But legal advice can also help parents by taking action to enforce those rights if necessary. So, to enforce the right to compensation, specialist solicitors will make a claim for compensation, will get all the evidence needed to win the claim and make sure the child receives the right amount of compensation for their injuries. Governments have legal duties too. They must do all they can to support disabled children and their families. They must do all they can to ensure that children survive and develop to their full potential. And they must support parents by creating support services for children and by giving parents the help they need to raise their children. But sometimes legal advice is needed to make sure that the government fulfills its legal obligations. So, for example, a school and a local authority should assess a child's special educational and healthcare needs and issue an EHC plan to meet those needs. But sometimes it isn't done, or it isn't done properly. So legal advice from a specialist solicitor can make sure that is done and done properly.
Excellent. And on the sort of subject of compensation, how can seeking compensation help?
In many ways. In the first place, through an investigation by the solicitors, we can find out what happened and provide answers so that lessons can be learned to prevent others being injured, and we can hold the organisation accountable. But the two main ways that seeking compensation can help are essentially by improving quality of life and by giving peace of mind. And let me just say a bit more about those two things. So, in a very direct way, compensation can provide financial, practical, and emotional support. So, it can relieve financial pressures to repay expenses and to pay off debt, which often accumulates, especially in those the first months or years when parents may have to give up work or work fewer hours. It can buy equipment, it can buy adaptations to the home, it could even buy a new home if necessary. It can pay for therapies and medical treatment like speech and language therapy, physiotherapy, occupational therapy. It can pay for specialist support workers and carers. It can make sure that there's a coordinated and joined up package of care and therapy, making sure that there's close liaison between the statutory services and the private therapy team. It can also provide educational support at school. It might be that a classroom teacher, a classroom assistant can be recruited, for example, and trained, or it can provide additional equipment that the school can't provide, like eye gaze technology, for example. It could also pay for support for the wider family. So it might include family therapy or educational support for siblings, because often they tend to take a back seat in the sort of when the child with a disability takes all of the energy of the parents, the siblings are often sort of, put to one side for a little bit. And in all of that way, through that compensation, providing all of those bits of support and equipment and help, the family gets their life back and the child can flourish and adapt as soon as they can to their disabilities, learn as quickly as they can, and end up living a rich and fulfilling life despite any disabilities. But the other way that compensation helps is in the long term. It can make sure that a child's needs for a safe place to live, for care and support and therapy, that they're taken care of for as long as the child lives. And they may well outlive their parents. So no matter what happens, parents have that peace of mind of knowing that their child will be safe and secure and cared for as long as they live.
Yeah, absolutely. With so much unknown and uncertainty, having that peace of mind is absolutely invaluable and a priceless feeling to have.
Absolutely.
And how can having advice from a specialist such as those at Bolt Burdon Kemp help make what is a very difficult and often complex process easier?
It's really important to have a specialist solicitor. They will have the knowledge, the skills and the expertise to handle not only the complex medical and legal issues that arise in a claim for a child who suffered a brain injury, so the reasons that the medical treatment led to the injury in the first place, but also how that particular brain injury translates into real life and the practical problems it creates. So they will know what evidence will be needed, and they'll know how to get the best evidence to support the claim. They'll have access to the best experts, and they'll know how to get the best evidence from those experts. So they'll know what information to give the experts, how to get that information from the family. They'll also know that each family, each child is unique with their own unique challenges and problems and their own unique goals and aspirations. So the specialist will take time to listen, to understand the family and the challenges they face, to understand what the family is looking for, and to create those bespoke, tailored solutions that work for them. There's just never a one size fits all. And they'll also know, as I touched on above, that it's absolutely crucial that a child with a brain injury gets the right support from the get-go. This might be things like equipment or therapy or adaptations to the home or specialist care, but these things can really help a child to flourish and make a real difference to the long term. And the sooner they're put in place, the better. So specialist solicitors will know how important it is to apply for interim payments of compensation at the earliest possible opportunity and to put in place all the practical help and support needed to give the child the best opportunity to develop, to live as independently as possible. And they'll do that while the claim is ongoing. They won't wait until the end of the claim. So they'll also understand that a brain injury in a baby may not seem particularly serious when they're very young. So all young babies are dependent on others to meet their every need. But as they grow older, the severity and the complexity of the injury becomes more apparent. And those complexities continue to evolve during the child's life in ways that may not be predictable. So specialist solicitors will know that they need to identify what those complexities may be so that there's no surprises in later life, and so that the compensation will address those needs fully. And the other way I think specialist solicitors make a difference is that they will understand that this is an emotional situation for the parents, and they will communicate clearly and sensitively and with patience and with understanding that some conversations might be upsetting, but they will give the parents time to work through all of this with them. It's not a kind of, giving the information now and let's move on. It's, in your own time. So they'll visit at home and take as much time as needed to get what the solicitors need to pursue the claim and support the families. I think overall, they will make sure that the families avoid a situation where they realise further down the line that they haven't received enough money to meet their child's complex needs and lifelong needs. The aim of the compensation is to make sure that the child's lifelong needs are met and that there's peace of mind for the parents, that the money will always be there to look after their child even if something happens to them. So it's really important to get that amount right, and specialist solicitors will ensure that that happens.
Absolutely, and it's something that has struck me over the years when speaking with your team in terms of how those lifelong needs are assessed, and you know, the value of the pound today isn't what it's going to be in 40 years' time, and how, you know, inflation's taken into account, and changes, economic changes and factors that will affect what that compensation needs to support the family and the child for for a lifetime.
Exactly. Yeah.
So are there any words of reassurance or advice that you can give parents who might be watching or listening to this who are in this situation right now?
Yeah, I would say, I know you're busy, I know you're stressed, but please just pick up the phone for a chat. Let's see if we can help make things better. There'll be a friendly, knowledgeable person on the end of the line. They'll listen to your story free and without any obligation at all. And they'll advise whether they can help, and if so, what would happen next. Even if there's no claim for compensation, at least you will know that you've left no stone unturned in doing your best for your child. And those solicitors can also direct you to other sources of help and support. And if there is a claim for compensation, it would make a massive difference to your child's and your life now and in the future. So we're not scary. We're not going to bite. Just please pick up the phone, have a chat.
Thank you, Jo. And yeah, and if you are interested in having a chat, Jo's contact details and a link to the article that covers more information on this topic and many others are in the description down below. We regularly feature articles from Bolt Burdon Kemp on our Cerebral website as well, so please do keep an eye on that and make sure that you're subscribed to our newsletter. So finally, Jo, thank you very much for your time today. It's absolutely fascinating, sort of, you know, understanding and discovering more of how the cogs work behind the scenes. And yeah, thank you for your time.
Oh, well, thanks so much, James, for this opportunity. It's really, really important to us to get that message across. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And yeah, thanks for everyone for watching and listening. Take care.